8.3 trigonometry to use sine, cosine, tangent, and ratios. Basically, what trigonometry is just the study of ratios and right triangles. That's what trigonometry is. Ratios and right triangles. So like I said, trigonometry is set up with ratios. When we're using ratios in a right triangle, the thing is the angle depends on what the ratio would be. So in all of these ratios, I'm using this angle right here because it's saying the sine of A. The sine of A is going to be my opposite side length, so opposite. And it's also going to be over the length, hypotenuse. Again, sine is just a ratio of side lengths. When I'm looking at cosine A, again, it's still at A, except for cosine, the ratio is my adjacent over my hypotenuse. So that's what the ratio would be for cosine. And lastly, when I'm talking about tangent, again, I'm still working with A. Tangent is my opposite side length over my adjacent side length. Again, sine, cosine, and tangent are all just ratios of right triangle side lengths. Ratio. So typically you will hear me say SOHCAHTOA. Why? Because it's a shortened version to help you memorize. So when I'm talking about sine, it's so. So sine is my S, and it's opposite over hypotenuse. That's why it's the OH. Ka is my cosine. So cosine is my C, and cosine has the ratio of my adjacent over my hypotenuse. And TOA is my tangent. So that's why it's T, and it's the ratio of my opposite over my adjacent side length. So if I'm looking at this, I want to say what are the sine, or what are the ratios of sine, cosine, tangent for angle T. So first thing I'm going to do is just write sine of T, cosine T, and tangent T, because that's what I'm looking for. And for all these problems, I'm using this as my reference. So when I'm looking at angle T, this is my opposite would be 8, my adjacent would be 15, and my hypotenuse is going to be 17. So when I look at sine of T, that's so it's opposite over hypotenuse. So that's what my ratio would be. Look at cosine, it's ka, so that's my adjacent over my hypotenuse. And if I look at tangent, it's toa, so it's my opposite over adjacent. So right now I want you to pause the video, and I want you to figure out what the three ratios would be for angle G. That's going to change your labeling of sides. So sine of G should be 15 over 17. Cosine of angle G is 8 over 17. And tangent of G is 15 over 8. So now we're going to use, how are we going to use so, ka, and toa to actually figure out what lengths are? So write down these 4 steps, because these are going to be the same steps that you're going to be using each and every time when solving with trigonometry. You always first have to have a right triangle. Then you want to decide if the problem has to do with sine, cosine, or tangent. So here's the angle I'm dealing with, and I am given my opposite side, and I'm looking for my adjacent side. So then I have to think, is it so, ka, or toa? I have O and A. O and A is in toa, so it's going to be tangent. Then I'm going to write up my proportion. So my proportion would look like this. In this case, I'm using tangent. My angle here is 15 degrees because that is what's given at angle B. And that's equal to toa is my opposite over my adjacent. So when you're setting up this proportion, I would always put the first number, the trigonometry function, over 1. Because now what I have is a proportion, a fraction equal fraction. And if you remember, fraction equal fraction, the first thing I should do is cross multiply. So on the left hand side, I'm going to have x times tan of 15. going to be equal to 1 times 10.2. So that's just 10.2. Now, tan 15 is just a number. That's just telling you what the ratio is of any right triangle that has a degree of 15. So I'm going to divide by tan of 15 on both sides of the equation, because this is what I can put directly into my calculator. So x is going to be equal to, because these two will cancel each other out, 38 point, and it says hundredth. If I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth, that means 2 decimal spots. So I have a 0.066, so that second 6 will round it up to 7. And my units here are in feet, because you have to make sure that you have the correct units. So this would be my final answer. When you put in your tangent of 15, you have to make sure that you are in degree mode. So right now, this is a problem that I want you to attempt yourself. So try to pause the video, yes, pause the video, and work down these 4 problems by yourself. Step number 1, I'm dealing with angle P. I'm looking for QR, so I put my X there. So I have my opposite, because it's opposite my angle, and my hypotenuse. So I have O and H, so I think SOHCAHTOA. I should be using sine. So if you didn't know which one to use, now you know you should use sine. Now try to set up the proportion by yourself. This is what your proportion should look like, because it's sine of 63, because that's your angle, is equal to your opposite over your hypotenuse. Remember, this should be put over 1, because now once you have your proportion, you can cross multiply. Again, pause the video if you didn't already solve from there and try to finish it off. And you should have gotten 11.49 as your answer. Make sure you took very good notes. I will be asking you to look back in your notes a lot during this section, so make sure you have very good notes, and have a great day.